Welcome back to the channel. We've got some tips today on the Cinematic Studio series. So many of these questions get asked online over and over. A few of them are answered in the manual, a few of them are contact tips, but I decided to collect them all together just so that they could all be in one place. And if there's any I'm missing, please make a comment. So maybe I'll make a version 2 of the video or a part 2. For now, let's just dive in and look at some tips for making the best use of the Cinematic Studio series for Kontakt. On the screen here, we've got the two clarinets loaded up from the Cinematic Studio's Woodwinds, and you'll notice at the bottom, I've got the info loaded. So a few of the tips I'm going to show you are just watching what appears down here in the info area of Kontakt as I roll over the menu items. So if I roll over the sustain patch here, it says shift-click to learn the key switch position. I can change the sustain key switch, which is currently set to C0 down here, as a different pitch. There it is, B-1. Now I'm using B-1 to select sustains. And these other key switches will select the other articulations. So let's set that back to C0 by clicking Reset All. And it's back. Another thing you can do is Alt-click to purge. So if I don't need the Trills samples loaded or the staccatos or the measured repetitions, they get removed from RAM. Now, a contact tip, you can also use Purge All Samples or just Update Sample Pool, either from the instrument itself, or you'll see I've got CSS cellos loaded up here. You can also use the disk icon and purge your sample pool or all your samples and reload your samples for all of the instruments in your multi. To reload those samples, just click the articulation again, and they'll get loaded back into RAM. Also in the key switch position, notice that there is a key switch for legato on and off. It's G#0 by default. It's this green key up here, and you can use it to turn legato on and off, but it is velocity controllable. So if I press that G# lightly, I've switched legato off, and I press it hard, it's back on. And a contact trick, if you didn't already know, I'm going to demonstrate on one of the keys we can hear, and I'll switch over to staccato so we can hear this. If you are at the bottom of the key, you're playing it at the higher velocities. And if you move your mouse and play those keys at the top of the key, you're playing at lower velocities. So that G#, if I'm at the bottom of the key in the louder velocity, legato is going to be on, and at the top, it's going to switch off. The same is true in the marcato. A couple of tips there about how to switch legato on and off. This legato on and off switch also has a Keyswitch CC. That means if you move the continuous controller numbered 58, you can do a whole variety of things, and one of them is turning legato on and off. But it can also do a whole bunch of other things. At the very bottom, I've got sustain on, and legato will be wherever it used to be. So it just selects sustain. As I move it up, we are going to get repetitions, staccatissimo, staccato, sforzando. The next big one is trills. And again, legato isn't going to change. It's going to be trills whether legato was on or off previously. Then we move over to measured repetitions, and sync to host, again, is either on or off, is not affected. So it's only changing one thing at a time. The next one is marcato, and then it changes to marcato with the spiccato overlay. Now here we're at legato off and legato on. And that's it. So moving through it slowly, you can pick each of these with one CC control. You can map these in your DAW, and it'll flip all of those switches and change all those articulations for you. And that's all determined by whichever CC control you've got selected here, this Keyswitch CC. A couple things about the Kontakt interface itself. We've got a curved line indicating that you change the reverb by moving your mouse in a circle. Actually, it works best if you just move your mouse horizontally, directly left or right. Same for the pans. Just move it left or right. Don't try to move it in an arc. On a Mac, you can command click to set these to the default value. I believe it's control on a PC. And hold down shift to make smaller adjustments. I'm holding down the shift key, and I can make very tiny adjustments. Maybe it's the volume. This is a Kontakt thing. Maybe it's the tuning. Hold down Shift, tuning move up and down. Hold down Shift and they move by very small, these are cents that we're changing, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3 cents up and down. If you want to fake a Divisi, you can move the tuning up a couple steps, half steps. So move this up a second and then click the gears and change your Midi transpose down a couple steps, couple half steps. So with the Midi transpose down 2 and the tuning up 2, we're going to hear the same pitches out of the instrument, but it is going to be using different samples. This avoids phasing if you want to play a similar part or the same note with 2 different desks, 2 different instrumentalist desks, and trigger different samples at the same pitches. With the mics, you can use Kontakt's different outputs here and add some different outputs and use the different microphone positions to send to different outputs. Then you can choose to route the other microphone positions to those other outputs so that Kontakt can feed multiple audio channels in your DAW as you're recording, and you can record the room mics separately from the main mics and the overhead mics. Furthermore, if you expand these, each of these channels can have insert effects added to them. For instance, you could add additional convolution reverbs that are able to host impulse responses from your hard drive. And in this way, Cinematic Studio Woodwinds or strings or piano or brass could be in different rooms that aren't part of the package that you bought from Cinematic Studios. Just drag your impulse responses here, adjust the dry and wet settings, make any EQ changes to the impulse response, and then you can set your Kontakt instruments into different rooms. Trills, if you want to play a trill, obviously hold 2 notes down at once. You can take legato off the trills and adjust the release. Same is true for the sustain. If you don't like you can just shorten that up and the notes will become very short. It ends up becoming unnatural at some point because the sustain sample is stopping, but the ambient sound from the room does not stop. That's true also in the close mic. You can sync the measured repetitions to the host, meaning whatever your DAW is set to. In this case, we can check that by looking here. It's set to 120. You have to let go of the key quickly in order to let the measured repetition trigger. The easiest way to play parts in with the strings is just to use the standard legato mode, not the advanced legato mode. It's very responsive, and you can play without having to worry about any sort of delay. After you've recorded it, if you wanted to switch to advanced mode and adjust the timing of the note starts and stops, you could do that. Advanced mode has another speed of legato and does give you a little bit more control, but it can feel a little bit laggy at the slowest transition times. Another point to make about the strings specifically is that each of the legato modes has a portamento at the bottom of the range. So the very slowest range of the legato transitions is more of a portamento that's really not shown on the interface. It says slow here, but there's actually a faster speed, which is slow. And it doesn't really tell you that there's a portamento happening when you're even lighter at the very lightest velocities. Those portamento changes can be adjusted here in the additional controls, portamento velocity, and the portamento volume. Let's look at the vibrato control for a moment. The vibrato on-off is set by default to CC2, and we're going to listen to the vibrato with the flutes, with the two flutes. Now, as we're listening to this flute vibrato, there's going to be a couple things that should not be relevant, but they will probably catch your ear. If I'm holding notes down forever, it's not necessarily the way two flautists would actually be playing. They would be taking breaths, and you'd carve your phrases out so that they can actually breathe, but this is not going to let them breathe. We're just listening to vibrato and non-vibrato. So this is the vibrato control. It's either on or off. This is what it's going to sound like with it on and off at various dynamic levels, various notes. And again, it's going to be just on or off. That switch between is pretty subtle. Meaning it's kind of a gradual fade in and out of vibrato. But you can't control the rate or the speed or truly the depth. It's called the vibrato depth control just in the Midi kind of controlling language, but it's not controlling actual depth of vibrato. It's just on or off. So that is the flute vibrato controls. That about wraps it up for this set of tips. Did I miss anything? Is there anything important that everyone should know about? Put a comment, please, so that we can keep sharing information and keep gathering it together. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, and cheers.